Just a few hours ago, House members received a classified briefing on UAPs. A bipartisan group from the House Oversight Committee sent a letter to the Intel Community Inspector General last summer requesting more details. That letter was in response to testimony by former intelligence official David Grush, who told News Nation in an exclusive interview that the government was in possession of biological evidence of non-human intelligence. Senior national correspondent Brian Enton is live. Brian, how much was revealed?
Not a lot of information revealed from what we can tell. Remember, this was a secret classified meeting in a SCIF, which is a room where the Congress men and women cannot bring in their cell phones. It's a secret environment. So we don't know all the information. We were able to talk to several of the lawmakers when they came out, and they said, look, they didn't get a ton of info, but most of them did say, Nicole, that this secret meeting did move the needle a little bit when it comes to transparency, saying that they learned a little bit more. Many of them saying that based on what they learned at this classified meeting today, it makes them believe UFO whistleblower David Grush even more. So that was certainly very, very interesting. Listen to what a few of them told us just a little while ago.
I just think what most of the American people fear is true, is that the government, there's a concerted effort to conceal as much information as possible, both from Congress and to the general public.
I think that some people are looking for things. This was not the venue to determine those things. But for me, I got a lot of clarity.
It was difficult, Nicole, getting any real concrete information out of the lawmakers, again, because this was a secret meeting and they received this confidential information. But you could tell that there were tidbits that they found out. Representative Burchett actually said that based on what he learned at the meeting, he feels like he now knows who to approach to come to another public UFO hearing, who he wants to question. And then there was something interesting that Congressman Jared Moskowitz of Florida said when he came out. He actually tweeted this a little while ago. He said, based on what I've heard, Grush's claims have merit. Again, Grush is the UFO whistleblower. So we didn't learn a ton, but this definitely seems like it was a step in the right direction when it comes to hopefully eventually learning more about what the government actually knows.
Yeah,
Nicole?
Possibly a step forward here. Okay, Brian, thank you.
What they call unidentified anomalous phenomena. The rest of us call them UFOs. Caroline Shively reports it's about more than little green men. The hearing is about billions of dollars going into the Pentagon's secret programs.
Oh, we're looking. And so is the House Oversight Committee, holding a closed-door meeting Friday about UFOs. This video of a Navy FA-18 jet cruise encounter is just one of the mysteries they're looking into, a sighting already investigated by the Pentagon.
We've spent tens of millions of dollars on something that they say doesn't exist. And I'm not talking about little green men or flying saucers. I'd just like to know what they're spending the money on.
Congress seems less interested in outer space than the inner workings of secret Pentagon programs.
The helicopters that wound up killing Osama bin Laden over a decade ago, those were part of an advanced technology program. They were helicopters that nobody knew existed. They came out of Area 51, by the way.
And the U.S. is not the only country sending secret aircraft into the sky.
We know there is drone technology that Russia, China, Iran has been developing. We know that China has been actively spying through spy balloons.
A bipartisan House bill introduced Thursday would create a way for commercial pilots and other airline employees to report UFO sightings to the federal government.
It's really important that there is disclosure and transparency. I think that's what the public wants. And so we've got to just take it with seriousness. It is not a joke.
That was Caroline Shively reporting. When will the public get answers? Maybe never. This hearing is behind closed doors because so much of the information is classified.
A new classified congressional UFO briefing is set for today, and Congressman Tim Burchett told News Nation what to expect for today's hearing.
I expect to walk out and be completely disappointed once again. I don't want to see little green men or flying saucers. I just want to know where they're spending the tens of millions of dollars on a subject they say doesn't exist, and yet they're spending this money. The American public has a right to know. Congress constitutionally has a right to know. You have unelected bureaucrats, once again, dictating to the elected body what to do, and we take it. We don't have the guts. We ought to cut their funding out. We ought to do what we're entitled to do as a Congress. But again, the big boys, the lobbyists, the defense industry, what have you, they have their hooks in all of this, and they're not going to allow us to see anything. It's so compartmentalized now, it'd be hard to get the truth. But this bunch, again, will just be there to confuse us and further frustrate me.
Meanwhile, in a new interview, UFO whistleblower David Grush shared if he has any regrets going public with alleged information on classified UAPs and the hit piece on him regarding his alleged mental health history.
Is there any moment where you've kind of regretted speaking up? You kind of had to, right?
Yeah, I mean, I saw that was the, course of action I had to do. I mean, I don't, regret it. It's, I didn't want to live in the Matrix when there's stuff like this that's being, hidden from the world populace. Yeah, I'm not doing this for fame or fortune, and it was not career enhancing, and I had to do it for further my own protection when it seemed like my Inspector General complaints and my reprisal complaints weren't going to fully shield me from, ongoing attacks behind the scenes against myself.
Do you think that the people that we know are coming forward, people that have filed IG complaints, to follow in your footsteps, right? Do you think they're encouraged by how you've been treated?
Some were encouraged and inspired, and obviously there were a number of individuals that went to the Inspector General after I went public, but they certainly saw like that hit piece on me and other things, and that certainly frightens anybody to not have that kind of stuff exposed in your personal life just because you're trying to do something, hopefully magnanimous for everybody else.
News Nation's Brian Enton spoke with a veteran Marine on a 17-minute-long interview of an alleged UFO jellyfish. Marines reportedly nicknamed this particular UFO a, quote, spaghetti monster.
Did you think when you watched it for the first time that, it could be, non-human?
It crossed my mind because the theories that we had, like I said, didn't fully explain it. And so naturally, I think our human mind or our curiosity kind of goes there and it's like, is this something extraterrestrial or extra dimensional or paranormal or whatever, you want to call it. And it didn't seem to be posturing to threaten us at all. So it wasn't like we needed to take immediate action against it.
Very interesting. Perhaps this is the real reason they want, governmental monitors on those fishing charters, Amber. They're looking out for the jellyfish.
Yeah, maybe so. That video is pretty weird. There could be a rational explanation for it. There could not be. It could be very well be something extraterrestrial. The way it sort of glides is pretty odd. But back to this congressional hearing with Tim Burchett. He went on with that UFO podcast shortly after he left the SCIF today. And he said that he thinks anybody who has been questioning David Grush's credibility left there thinking and knowing that Grush is legit, which is an interesting statement, considering how much pushback there has been against David Grush, as we saw that hit piece against his character. And Tim Burchett has also said that he was talking to people who were in the Trump administration about his recent activity in regards to UFOs, and they told him that he kicked a hornet's nest and that he needs to get some bodies around him. So I just want to give Tim Burchett a shout out and a thank you for his tireless work on this issue. I know it's come at the expense of mockery by some of his colleagues and a lot of people not taking him seriously. But if there is a job for Congress, it's to try to get information that the government is hiding from the American people and bring it out into the open, or at least become aware of it themselves. And he's clearly doing that. So I think this issue is important. I appreciate that he's trying to hold them accountable and trying to get more answers on our behalf.
Yeah, if Tim Burchett was going on the news saying, I know there's aliens and we're going to find them, I can understand some people being questionable of that kind of a statement. If he says, there was definitely a spaghetti monster and believing all of the footage, even when it was unconfirmed, that's reason to not believe someone. Burchett's being super reasonable on the topic of UAPs. He's saying, we're spending a ton of public dollars on this, evidently. The American people, or at least Congress, have a right to know what they've discovered. What information do they have? That is an extremely reasonable and sound and sane stance. For them to write that hit piece on David Grush, I wouldn't be surprised if it discouraged people from coming forward who have information, because that hit piece didn't really have to do with his credibility as a witness, as someone giving testimony on this. The piece was about him struggling with mental health. Most sane people I know are quite sad about the state of the world, sad about, what's going on in the country. I'm sure if you have that level of security clearance, you've seen some stuff that disturbs you very deeply. If not thinking, you're more sane if you are critical, of what's going on in the world. You're more sane if it makes you sad. So much so that you seek treatment for mental health. That doesn't make him not credible. So that hit piece really disheartened me, but I can see anyone who struggled with their mental health or wants to protect their family not coming forward out of fear that they would be attacked. So I really didn't like that hit piece came out at all, because what's being asked for is very reasonable. But people love framing the alien enthusiasts, people who are curious about what's going on with UAPs, as somehow people who are insane just because we haven't seen aliens before, despite most scientists saying it is more likely than not that we're not the only life forms in the galaxy, if not the universe. And so it's just very dishonest. But thankfully, we'll get something out of this gift, but maybe Burchett's right in how he said he plans to just be disappointed.
Yeah, I mean, we've heard reports as well about how the government goes after its own whistleblowers. And so it's not surprising that a lot of people would be unwilling to come forward, even anonymously, because these protections that they're supposed to receive as whistleblowers are routinely undermined by their superiors in the government. And so it is a very unfortunate and dangerous situation for them. A lot of this information, of course, is classified. So necessarily, if these people come out publicly, they risk losing their clearance, their job, in general, just their livelihood, and they also risk being sued or put in jail. So it's not an easy decision, I think, for anyone to talk about this publicly. And then on the congressional side, I think what's especially frustrating is that as we have this dynamic where people who actually work directly with this information can't really talk about it publicly, at the very least, we should expect that Congress is able to get access to this information in a secure environment. And repeatedly, they've been denied from doing so. They've had to fight for months and even years now just to get these hearings where they can go in the SCIF and view some of the materials. So repeatedly, it just seems like they're being stonewalled at every step of their potential investigation. And increasingly, the reasons become more erratic from the government as to why they're not allowed to view this.
Right. And these are people who are elected to public office. At the heart of this, it's a question about democracy. We touch on this point time and again when we discuss the issue of UAPs. But I can imagine someone like Tim Burchett or any real representative in Congress questioning the time they're spending on this issue when they go to the Pentagon, they're put in a SCIF, and they're given no information at all. I can imagine questioning your role as a public servant, as an elected representative. Am I wasting America's time by continually going to the Pentagon and being disappointed, by expecting information to come out because I was elected to represent the people and this is what the people want, just to have unelected bureaucrats tell you, no, we're not giving you anything? So it's good that we haven't had members of Congress decide to give up on this. They've kind of been unrelenting in getting this information out, in pursuing interviews with people who have this information that are willing to come forward, many of them risking their security clearance, many of them being active members, not just retirees. And so it's kind of unprecedented territory in the sense that they're getting that. And so I can see why they still have a little bit of hope, but it sounds like Burchett's getting frustrated. He said he's getting frustrated, but I hope he's not on the verge of quitting, because he's done a really good job putting pressure on public officials to say, this is a democracy, people want this information, we should have it out there for the public to understand, or at least elected representatives have access to it.
It's been a big week for UFO news, and of course, News Nation has been all over it. First, journalist Jeremy Corbell released this now infamous video of the so-called jellyfish UFO flying over an American base in Iraq. No, we don't know what this is either. Then today, for the first time in history, members of the House Oversight Committee received a classified briefing on UFOs. So was it just another useless meeting, or did it actually advance the crusade for transparency? We don't know the specifics of what was discussed because it's classified. We do know this, however. Lawmakers were briefed by the intelligence community's Inspector General about claims that whistleblower David Grush made, first here on News Nation and then later at a congressional hearing. Grush made the bombshell claims that the government has a top-secret UFO program to reverse engineer UFOs of non-human origin. One of the staunchest advocates for UFO transparency is Republican Representative from Tennessee, Tim Burchett. News Nation spoke with him on the steps of the Capitol moments after he emerged from that briefing. Congressman Burchett says he's not done pushing for information on UFOs, where they come from, and what the Pentagon knows about them.
I still think we need to ask some questions and we need to know some answers. It's just going on too long that we have, as I was told, I have kicked a hornet's nest at the Pentagon.
And you know what happens when you kick a hornet's nest. You get stung. But will that be enough to unleash a swarm of new information on UFOs? Senior national correspondent Brian Enton has been following the story and joins us live. Brian, how much will we find out from this closed-door meeting, given the fact that it was all classified?
We might not find out much, Elizabeth, but it is clear that lawmakers learned something new at this meeting. You know, we've interviewed them when they've come out of other briefings and they'll say, oh, that was a complete waste of time. They didn't say that today. And it seems, based on our interviews with them after the briefing ended, that they left feeling more confident in David Grush's story.
It's reasonable to say that everyone that was in the room received probably new information. I certainly did. And
This meeting, unlike the one we had previously when we did this briefing, this one actually moved the needle.
A group of bipartisan lawmakers talking after a secret meeting with the Inspector General of the intelligence community. The topic, what the government knows about UFOs.
It's giving me a more clear perspective, a little bit more of a clear perspective. Before it's very blurry. Everything is extremely blurry.
The House lawmakers are not saying much, but they are saying enough to make clear that they believe at least some of what former intel official and UFO whistleblower David Grush alleges, that the government knows about UFOs, or UAPs, unidentified anomalous phenomena.
I was informed in the course of my official duties of a multi-decade UAP crash retrieval and reverse engineering program.
I believe that he's telling the truth. I think that he is a credible witness. And what I can also say is one thing in particular that really caused me to be concerned about this whole thing is that Grush had stated to myself, Representative Burchett, and another member on the phone that there were people that were hurt hiding this information and keeping this information safe and or trying to come forward with this information. What I can tell you is I believe that claim after now leaving.
Almost all of the lawmakers said they left the secret meeting with more questions, but also with clues about what parts of whistleblower David Grush's testimony will lead to answers.
I think it's incredibly important to listen to the specific words that Grush uses. You know, Grush never said extraterrestrial or alien. He said interdimensional. I think that that's incredibly important because those are the types of things that when we go in there, there's just certain things that I think that it's important that you guys listen to on that.
There's also a renewed push for another public UFO hearing to continue the push for transparency.
It's got me focused on who we need to be bringing into the hearing. As I've stated, it's not about little green men and flying saucers. The issue is tens of millions of dollars on an issue that we've been told does not exist since 1947, yet they're spending that money on researching something.
And even tonight, Elizabeth, there are now lawmakers tweeting about the possibility of another public hearing on UFOs sometime soon. We don't know the exact time frame, but it's clear whatever they heard in this briefing sort of revitalized the idea for a public hearing. Burchett said today that he doesn't want to talk about who the possible witnesses could be because he fears that the Pentagon could try and spook them. Elizabeth?
Right, yeah, he was saying that last time they put out their witness list, a bunch of witnesses got sort of bullied into not testifying, so he's now not going to release those publicly. Brian Enton, fascinating story. Thanks. Enthusiasts and investigators alike, this meeting has been a long time coming. News Nation's special correspondent Ross Coulthart was the first to interview David Grush about his UFO claims over the summer. Ross joins us now. I was really struck, Ross, and I know you were too, about a tweet that Congressman Gerald Moskowitz, Democrat of Florida, put out this afternoon saying he thought that after this briefing, this classified briefing, that many of Grush's claims have merit.
Exactly, Elizabeth, and good evening to you. I think it's extraordinarily significant what Jared Moskowitz has said, because it echoes what other members of the committee are saying privately, that whilst they weren't able to cover all of the complaint allegations made by David Grush because of limited time and also security constraints, because there were certain things that the Inspector General couldn't talk about, what they were able to put to the Inspector General, he apparently did confirm as credible and authentic. And this is very, very significant. We're talking here about grave allegations of illegality and criminality by a former very senior, very well-informed intelligence official who worked at the highest levels of military intelligence in the US. And I think it's very interesting to hear now that committee members are talking about the probability of further hearings, because I do know there are other witnesses wanting to speak in the backdrops, waiting for that opportunity.
What did you make of Congressman Luna just now in Brian's package, talking about the fact that she now believes, in fact, people have been hurt as they tried to come forward and reveal what they knew?
Look, Elizabeth, I know for a fact that those allegations are true. I mean, I've had the most disturbing allegations put to me of people being hurt, threatened, and God forbid, even killed to protect this secret. And I suspect I know what Representative Luna is talking about, and I can only hope that there is an opportunity where a proper congressional committee can do its job and get this evidence put in a public hearing so that those responsible for these very serious crimes, we're talking here about crimes, are brought to justice and made to account for what they've been doing illegally, improperly, and without the oversight of the US Congress.
Do you think, I mean, they were meeting today in this SCIF, which is a secure room where you can discuss classified information with the inspector generals of the intelligence community. So they weren't meeting with the Pentagon or whoever might be running this alleged secret program. So what exactly were these lawmakers able to learn? What information does the ICIG, the Inspector General of the Intelligence Community, have?
Okay, the most important thing, Elizabeth, was although they couldn't go into specifics, you know, they couldn't be told where these alleged craft are, whether biologics are of a particular species or whatever, what they were able to be told was a broad confirmation of the credibility, of the authenticity of Mr. Grush's claims. That is crucial because, as you know, there's been an enormous attempt to try and blacken Mr. Grush's claims by casting doubt about them. The Pentagon keeps on putting out this very disingenuous assertion that ARROW has no credible evidence of extraterrestrial visitations to this planet. One, we're not talking about ETs, we're talking about something else. We're talking about a non-human intelligence. And two, ARROW, the Pentagon's UFO investigation office, does not speak for the Pentagon. It's time for very senior members of the military and indeed of the intelligence community to be brought forward under oath and properly questioned, because the Pentagon is allowed to get away too often with sophistry, evasive words which do not respond to specific allegations.
Yeah.
Back here to the Hill. So unidentified anomalous phenomena, UAPs, they are a hot topic, as you might know, on Capitol Hill. But really, it's nothing new. Consider this headline from the New York Daily News in 1952. Jets chase D.C. sky ghosts as air traffic controllers at Ronald Reagan Washington National Airport here across the river spotted 7 unidentified flying objects in the sky. Here we are 72 years later, and we're still grappling with the question, are we alone? Lawmakers earlier today started to take critical steps towards transparency surrounding UAPs. They've really been doing it for a while. But the latest move happened with a closed-door classified briefing up on Capitol Hill. Republican Tennessee Congressman Tim Burchett, one of the top lawmakers probing the issue. He shared his frustrations with me about what he heard behind closed doors. Watch.
So you just
came from the briefing. Were you satisfied at what you heard? I know you.
No, my biggest thing all along, it's, obviously a lot of folks want to, it's little green men, it's flying saucers.
Right.
My concern is the tens of millions, if not billions of dollars that we've invested in the research of this issue since 1947 that we know of, and yet the federal government keeps telling Congress they don't exist, and yet obviously they're investigating something.
So you think?
And then when I have an admiral tell me they're real, when I have some of the top pilots in the world say they're real, I don't see why American taxpayers can't get that information.
So you think there have been billions potentially in government money that's been spent on developing something, or?
Well, I'd like to know that. Are they developing something, or have they recovered something that has allowed them to spend this much money?
When you come out of that briefing, what questions do you have?
I end up with more questions.
Every time, or just
yeah, always, because I always say it's like looking down the barrel of a .22 rifle. They are very specific in what they know, and it is very compartmentalized. It's like Oak Ridge National Laboratory, which I don't represent, but over 6,000 folks that work there live in the 2nd Congressional District that I represent. And they, during the Second World War, over 2,000 people were working on the bomb, and less than a half a dozen knew what they were working on, because it was so compartmentalized. I mean, husbands and wives did not know. Brothers and sisters who worked at the lab did not know because of that compartmentalization. And that's carried over into this. So say it was a recovered craft in 1947 at Roswell, New Mexico. Every person that was involved in that is dead now. And it's been passed on and passed on and passed on. And now with these private contractors who you and the press and we as Congress cannot access because they're not under FOIA, Freedom of Information Act, because they have passed it on to a private contractor. And is that by design? I don't know. But I still think we need to ask some questions, and we need to know some answers. Dadgummit, it's just going on too long, and there's no excuse for not giving us other than arrogance.
I hear you on asking questions, and that's part of your job, obviously. But I'm wondering, beyond that, what comes next in your view?
Well, that's a great question, and I'm going to be working with the chairman, and since I'm not chairman of this so-called subcommittee it is a subcommittee, I'm going to be working with them to get us an excellent list of witnesses for this next hearing, and I'm not going to release them because the last time I did that, the folks were literally told not to come.
By who?
We were told by NASA, a quasi branch of NASA, other groups. They claim they didn't do it, but the folks told me they did. And we'd asked over a dozen folks, that's 12, and we ended up with 3 excellent witnesses that put their love of this country over the love of themselves. Because obviously Grush was ridiculed. He was outed as somebody that had PTSD. And in East Tennessee, we don't make fun of people because they served their country and suffered from it. We celebrate those people, and we try to get them and support them. But in Washington, D.C., they destroy those people. And that just shows the ruthless nature, and that shows that we are over the target, that we have, as I was told, I have kicked a hornet's nest at the Pentagon.
I know you got a flight to catch, so we'll leave it there.
Right,
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
Yep.